Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Amateur Radio General Class, session number 1, Orientation. So today is the orientation session, and our agenda for today is as follows. We will look at some welcoming remarks and some logistics. We will find out about the facilitator, a bit about React, what amateur radio is all about. We will learn a bit about the course itself. We'll talk about the learning objectives that the course relates to. We will also discuss the various classes of licenses that are available on amateur radio. We will talk about the follow-on sessions. We will discuss the study material. We will also discuss quite a bit about the exams itself. We have a couple of frequently asked questions, and then we will deal with the next steps. So first of all, thank you, everyone, for your interest in this course. A special welcome to everyone, including returning students, those who would have participated in the technician class last year, and all of the new persons. It's really great to have you. Note, there's no cost to participate in this course. All sessions that we will be doing will be held virtually. We will be using the Zoom platform, but we will also have an overflow via YouTube, should in case we exceed the Zoom limit. Also, just advice to the persons on Zoom, always try to keep your Zoom updated to the latest version, all right? So whether you're using it on a tablet or computer or even a smartphone, try and keep it updated. We will be using a presentation style or webinar style. All of the slides that we share will be sent via email. I'm just wanting to let persons know that there's the possibility of interruptions during the presentation because of work. Also, I wish to apologize in advance for any challenges that might be encountered. Sometimes the technology presents challenges, whether it's Zoom itself, whether it's the internet access, whether it's YouTube. For all of this to work, sometimes there are issues. So I apologize in advance. If we do have to stop class, we will just reschedule to another day. Hopefully that will not happen. These sessions, I must say, are being recorded. So every participant needs to be aware of that. And the reason we're recording is to make future playback possible. Not everyone is able to make every session, and we want to make it as convenient as possible. Should in case someone not be able to attend live, they can certainly play back. However, that is also subject to the technology working. So I'm not able to guarantee that we will always have recordings available after the session. But once they stick, we'll provide the recording. In terms of prerequisites for the course, there are two. The first one is that there is a little bit of maths involved, not heavy maths. We have very good evening to you, dear friends. Great to have you. There is a little maths involved, but we'll try to deal with that. It's not a whole lot, and we hope that, it will be fairly straightforward for everyone in the course. Also, because this is the general class course, there's a prerequisite for persons to have taken or reviewed the technician class material. We will discuss that in a little bit. You can ask questions or make comments during the class using the chat box. We may not have a lot of time to respond to all of it. However, at the start of each future session, we will do a Q&A where any questions that were asked that were not dealt with, or even questions that we dealt with, will be reviewed at the start of future sessions. So please feel free to ask questions. I also encourage persons to email. The email address will be coming up shortly. So please feel free to email or even WhatsApp your questions or comments. It's very much appreciated, including feedback. It's important to note that I'm here just as a guide. The participants, we all have to do the work, right? So I'm just here to guide you in the process of obtaining your amateur license. But what I want to say is that some of this material could be quite dry, and we will try to make it interesting. But most of all, I would want to ask everyone, please try to have some fun, and I will try my best to make this session or these sessions going forward as much fun as possible. So just a little bit about the facilitator. My name is Ravindranath Goswami. Most people know me or call me Robbie, and that's just fine. My location is in Trinidad and Tobago, and I say that because we actually do have quite a lot of participants from different parts of the world that are registered. So one of the questions was asked, where am I located? So TNT, Trinidad and Tobago. My email address, so robbie@9z4rg.com. That's the email address that you can email any questions or comments to. Also, my mobile number, 1-868-682-2212. That's also good for WhatsApp, so feel free to WhatsApp. If you call me, I may not always be in a position to take the call, mainly because of work, but I will try to return the call as soon as possible. But better yet, drop an email, drop a WhatsApp, and as soon as possible, we'll try to respond. To let you know, I'm a member of a couple of radio organizations. So first, REACT, that's the Radio Emergency Associated Communications Teams, and we do have a couple slides on that coming up because persons have asked what REACT is about. TTAS, that's the Trinidad and Tobago Amateur Radio Society. The ARRL, that's the American Radio Relay League. The RSGB, that's the Radio Society of Great Britain. And also AMSAT, that's the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation. So those are some of the radio-based organizations that I belong to. My call signs, my amateur radio call signs, 9Z4RG, or in phonetics, 9 Zulu 4 Romeo Golf. That's my Trinidad and Tobago call sign. And NZ4RG, that's November Zulu 4 Romeo Golf, is my US call sign. And we are doing a US-based course, an FCC exam on ARRL course. And I'm an ARRL instructor. So that's probably all you're going to hear about me for the entire course, unless you ask. Now, a bit about REACT. So quite a few persons registering for the course asked, what is REACT about, what the organization does. So I have a couple of slides quickly just to share about the organization. So first of all, REACT, it's an acronym. It means Radio Emergency Associated Communications Teams. That's what REACT stands for. And we have the mission statement that's up. So we provide public safety communications. That's what we do. We do so to try to save lives, prevent injuries, and give any form of assistance where required. We also use any and all available means necessary in delivering that message. So at the bottom right of the slide, you will see some communications technologies. REACT would have started using CB, or Citizens Band Radio, in the 60s. However, since then, the organization has grown to embrace all forms of communications, including modern day voice over IP or VoIP technologies. So of course, REACT itself is membership based. So we depend on trained volunteers who do all of this together in the form of teams. The motto of REACT is very simple: public service through communications. Just a little bit about the REACT structure. REACT is an international organization. The headquarters is in Glendale, California. It was founded in 1962. And in the year 2022, REACT will be celebrating 60 years of existence. So it's been an organization around for quite a while. There's a board of directors structure, and there are 9 regions that comprise REACT International. And Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I am based, and many of the students here today are in Region 9. There are 8 regions within the United States, and Region 9 is what we call the rest of the world. And there are councils in the structure. We have teams, which is really the key to REACT operation, chartered teams. And the team in Trinidad and Tobago, or teams in Trinidad and Tobago, started in 1964. And we have both adult and youth membership in REACT. Just a little bit about what REACT does. So public service communications, we utilize two-way radio, but not radio always in the traditional sense. We use non-traditional radios as well. So you will see a sample listing, land mobile radio, family radio service, GMRS, CB amateur, voice over IP, etc. All of those are fair game when it comes to REACT operations. We also assist with local events, cultural events, sporting events, things like road races, swim meets, cycling, in Trinidad and Tobago, Carnival, TNT Carnival, known world over. React is very much involved in part of that. And we do have several members who are in the course today that are members of the team that work for Carnival as well. So quite a lot of human service that the membership gives voluntarily. National events, most importantly, emergency communications, disaster response. We work very closely with first responders, fire services, defense forces, and so on. And we also work very closely with partner agencies that we have memoranda of understanding with. So there are a couple listed on this slide there. You can see React International has MOUs with the American Red Cross, FEMA, NOAA, etc. Now, most of the channels of communication that React use are closed channels. Our VHF radio systems, many of them are closed. However, persons who are interested in React often ask, well, how can we see what React does? How can we hear the traffic, the operation? So one simple way, and thought I would introduce it to the class, is a platform known as Zello. That's just one of the platforms that React uses. And I would like to encourage persons to consider, downloading Zello. It's a free push-to-talk walkie-talkie app. And it works on any smartphone, computer, tablet, almost any operating system you will find out there, Windows, Apple iOS, Android, and no license is required to use Zello. However, note it's internet-based, so you need to have some sort of internet service, whether it's Wi-Fi, wired, mobile hotspots, 4G, LTE. You need some form of internet access. However, the app itself simulates walkie-talkie. So it's a good way to learn the practice, but React also uses Zello as part of what we do. So we then encourage persons to, if you're not already using Zello, download, install, and create an account. Just a quick question, persons who can do a raise hands on Zoom. If you can raise your hand, or do I have the raise hand feature available? Yes, if you can indicate or just put in the chat box, who are the persons who might be familiar with using Zello? Just curious to know whether persons, Zello users. Okay, so I'm seeing raise hands, I'm seeing, right, 13, 14, 17, 18, 19. Okay, so yes, please do a raise hands. All right, we're up to 22. All right, so quite a lot of people seem to be, all right, we're moving up in numbers there, yeah. All right. Okay. So we saw at least 40 persons raise their hands in the last couple of seconds. And I suspect some people didn't, because to find where they raise hand in Zoom could be a challenge. All right. So quite a lot of people, I would say maybe about half of the participants so far raised their hands. All right. So quite a lot of people have used or familiar with Zello. So the channel that is used on Zello after you have downloaded it, installed it, and created an account for yourself is the React members channel. It's on the screen there, React members. That's the channel you add or join. It's an open channel, and feel free to join the channel. There's quite a bit of traffic on it on a daily basis. We have nets as well. But right now, a couple of the topics that's coming up there has to do with this La Soufrière volcano issue that's happening in St. Vincent. So if you're interested, we also have persons that deliver information about the weather conditions and so on. So a lot of traffic and information, and that's just in case you're interested. It's optional for you, but just in case you're interested in interacting with React, finding a bit more about what React does, or just, listening to some of the traffic, you are more than welcome to do so. Just to let you know, we try to follow standard radio operating practices on Zello. So even though it's Zello voice over IP, we follow the same protocols that we do on our radio systems. We have nets or networks on a Saturday night at 9 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, which is the same currently as Eastern Standard Time. And we have tech nets, where a technical topic is often delivered on a Monday night as well. So that's just about Zello, and hoping that persons would consider giving it a check out, right? Okay, so having said all of that about React, there's a lot more information. Persons interested in getting more information about React, you're encouraged to go to the following websites. It's up on the screen. You can screenshot it, take it down, or you will get the slide deck, so you don't have to write anything down. And you can check those links out for further information should you require it about React. So that is as much as I'll also be saying about React through the entire course, unless persons have questions. So let's get now into amateur radio. What is amateur radio? Well, there's a definition according to the ARRL. They define amateur radio, which is also known fondly as ham radio. And they say it's a hobby, meaning that, you know, you're not paid for it. It's something that you do outside of your professional career. So that's why they say hobby. But it's really a serious hobby, especially when you get into emergency communications. And that's where the service part comes in, the amateur radio service itself. There's the satellite service, amateur satellite service. So you'll hear about service being referred to from time to time. And it's really about people, processes, and technologies. You bring people together, use electronics or technologies, and we all communicate together. And the thing with ham radio, amateur radio, is you're not dependent on terrestrial cell phone towers, for instance, or landlines. You can use communications that will go into free space, sometimes bounce off the ionosphere and go to another country. And you can communicate across wide areas of a locality as well as internationally, all without the traditional things that we are accustomed using as consumers to communicate. And that's why ham radio is very resilient in a disaster, because we are not really dependent on a lot of the commercial infrastructure. There's a note there, there are 3 license classes: technician, general, and extra, and that's the FCC system. So just to note, there was a little graphic that I skimmed over. World Amateur Radio Day takes place on the 18th of April. So just bear that in mind. The amateur radio service itself, and what you're seeing on the screen is taken directly from the FCC's website. And they are defining and talking about the amateur and amateur satellite service. Right, so the name is React Members. So answering a question about Zello, the channel on Zello is the word React, followed by a space, followed by the word members, as in plural. So you just search that name and you will get the channel. Thanks very much, Desi, for the question. Right, so you have to be qualified to be an amateur. That means you need to take an exam. Any age, certainly in the FCC system, you have young persons. Once you're interested in radio technique for personal aim and without pecuniary interest, meaning that this cannot be for profit, right? You have to do this as out of the goodness of your heart, out of your interest in technology, right? So that's what they mean without pecuniary interest. You should not or cannot be paid for the service directly. The services, you know, you assist people. You have the opportunity to conduct self-training where you experiment, and you get access to a lot of radio frequency spectrum. In fact, according to the FCC, about 29 pieces or bands or frequency bands throughout the spectrum are allocated once you get your license to the appropriate class. And you have many modes that you could use. So a lot of resources are provided once you become a licensed amateur. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. It seems as though we had a little glitch in the matrix. So I'm not sure. Let's see if we're still streaming live to YouTube. Yes, it says we are. All right, so these are the technical glitches that I mentioned that sometimes we have when we use these technologies. So could I have a raise of hands for persons if you're hearing me and seeing the slides are back again? All right, beautiful. Thanks so much. Hopefully we won't have too many of these glitches. So to continue, part of amateur radio is giving back. It's hopeful and expected that when you become a licensed ham, that you give back somehow to the community with your training and the knowledge that you have on all the experience. And hams are encouraged to give back to the community that you live in, get involved with voluntary work. Emergency communications, for example, where you assist served local agencies and national agencies is one of the ways that hams could contribute. And there are organizations that do just that you could become affiliated with, depending on the jurisdiction that you're located in. So you have ARES, RACES, CERT, REACT, Saturn. Those are some of the acronyms that do just that, utilize amateur radio in service of mankind, in service of the nation, in service of people. And those are the avenues for radio operators to give service to countries. So just letting you know, there can be a wider remit. Apart from just becoming licensed, it's an opportunity that you can utilize that knowledge and skill that you develop to assist others, especially in times of emergencies and disasters, which is where amateur radio really shines. Okay, so a bit about the course. So this course prepares participants to become licensed amateur radio operators. That's the purpose of this course. But note that the exam themselves are not part of the course. Exams are separate. Now, this second point I make just because a couple of persons who registered thought that what amateur radio was about was broadcasting, DJing, newscasting, or being a weather person and so on, or something along the line of mass communications, broadcasting, all right? So I don't think most of the persons here think that, but just on the off chance that there are persons who are attending that think that's what it's about, it's not any of those. However, that's not a reason for you to leave the course. Ask that you consider continuing and see what it's about. You might very well find it interesting. And even though I say it's not about broadcasting and DJing and so on, you know, they are very complementary skills when it comes to anything, equipment and radio. So that's just a disclaimer and a point. It's not about any of those aspects. Now, the information shared during the course is very much applicable to any form of two-way radio communications, not only amateur radio. So there are persons who have said to me, you know, Robbie, I'll take the course. I want to, you know, find out about it, but I don't really have an interest in taking the exam. And that is fine. Although you will hear me trying to advocate to consider doing the exams, several persons who have registered are registering just for the knowledge gain. And that is quite fine. Very comfortable with that. But again, you will hear us trying to advocate to consider taking the exam. And you will see why later on. So as part of the course, we are offering to persons who attend at least 75% of the sessions, we are offering an electronic certificate of participation, right? So that will be available. Note that in amateur radio, the reasons that there are exams is to ensure that you utilize the technology safely, responsibly, and that you avoid causing harmful interference. You also learn proper radio operating practices. The reason you learn all of this is so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot, proverbially. It's really important to be trained before you utilize amateur radio because you can punch in frequencies on a radio, and if you don't know what you're doing, you could be causing harmful interference and so on. So just a little idea as to why there are exams to become a ham, at least one perspective of it. Now, once you obtain your license, just like a driver's permit, just because you got your license, that does not necessarily make one an expert amateur radio operator. Some will say the learning has now begun. And some of us will also say that an amateur license is actually a license to experiment. So just bear that in mind, that there's a lot of learning to come afterwards based on your interest. It's almost a limitless field, quite frankly. All right. So we're about the halfway mark, and normally in the course, we will take a break, but because we're not dealing with any technical subjects, we're just going to go through and push through the course, this session rather, to the end. But during the actual sessions that we have at the halfway point, which is just about now, we will normally take a 2-minute break, but we'll just push on if I have your permission. So just to say that there are 3 classes of licenses in the FCC system that we are doing. Now, different territories, we have people from all over the Caribbean that are in the class. You will have to determine what is appropriate for you, but we have put up there the 3 classes of licenses, and we are doing the general class, which is also called Element 3, which is the exam in the FCC system that we are preparing for. In that particular class, see if we have the pointer, right? Yes. In that particular class, you have a question pool of 500 questions. And from that pool, when you sit the exam, you'll get 35 questions in the exam. And once you pass that exam, you then get the general class qualification. In Trinidad and Tobago, for the students here, once you do that exam and you get your certificate, you can then apply for the general class license in Trinidad and Tobago as well. So these are the 3 classes that are available in the FCC system. And we are presently at the general class, or Element 3 as the exam is known. Okay, so what are our learning objectives for this course? So we expect that after you complete this course, you will be able to demonstrate knowledge in relation to amateur radio and have the understanding of safety. We said safety first. The regulations that apply to amateur radio, operating practices, and what we will spend a lot of time as well on will be electrical and electronics theory. So that is essentially the broad areas. More specifically, our curriculum, or the course content that we'll be following. We have listed all of the sections, and we'll be tackling these topics in the order listed. So from next week, we'll be starting on electrical principles. We will then move to circuit components, then practical circuits, followed by signals and emissions. Then we go to antennas and feed lines. Then we discuss radio wave propagation. We go into amateur radio practices, operating procedures. We discuss electrical and radio frequency safety, and then the FCC rules or the commission rules. So we'll be tracking our progress, and this slide will be a common slide in each of our sessions, and we will see as we progress through where we are in respect of our curriculum. Okay, so the answer someone asked is, when we do events, do we get paid? So again, the answer is no. You're not supposed to be paid for your service. However, being paid, not directly, but there may be incidentals and so on that you may incur expenses. So it's a bit of a hybrid question, depending on the situation. As far as amateur radio is concerned, no, you're not supposed to receive any remittances or any compensation for your use of amateur radio, right? But it goes a little deeper than that, right? Very good question there. Thanks very much, Nikila. Right. So now that we have dealt with the curriculum, how are our sessions going to be organized? Well, today is our orientation session. Following on this, we expect to have 16 sessions or so. It really depends on how we are able to progress and based on the feedback from the participants. But we can expect 16 sessions. And we are looking at 1 day per week, and that day would be our Friday, as in today. We are looking to start at 8:30 p.m. That seems to be the most convenient date and time based on our survey of persons who had initially expressed an interest in doing the course. We expect to be running no longer than 1 hour per session. And we will do, as mentioned earlier, a 2-minute break midway. The way these sessions are structured, we'll be doing a light touch on the theory. In other words, we will not be going very deep into the theory, sufficient for understanding of the material. And we will use slide decks. So you will see prepared slide decks. However, we are going to be exam focused. That's our objective, to pass the exam. But we also take the approach where we try to develop an understanding of the material so that when we take those exams, we have an idea as to why the right answer is the right answer. But there's a question pool. We will be dealing with every single question in the question pool. In the general class, I believe it's just over 500 questions. We'll be tackling every one. But we'll only be looking at the right answers. We will not be dealing with distractors. We leave that to the participants. That's why we will be distributing the entire question pool. And it'll be up to each and every one to look at what the wrong answers or what we call the distractors are. And for each session, we'll be starting off with a Q&A of questions from the prior session. All right. Okay, cool. So what is the question pool that we've been talking about? So persons who have done the technician class would already be familiar, but I know there are many persons who have not yet tackled the technician class. This is what a question in the question pool looks like. And let's break it out. So it looks a little bit cryptic when you look at it by itself. You'll see something G1A02B97.305. I mean, what is that? The question and the answer, the question and the choices are fairly straightforward, but what's that cryptic stuff at the top? All right, so we are looking here at this G1. What is that? That's the question number. You know, just like you have question 1, question 2, question 3. Well, they have codified the question number. So this question number G1A03 is this particular question that you're seeing here. So whether you look at it in the question pool that contains the list of all the questions for the exam, or whether you look at it in any of the guides, maybe the guide that I'll be using to facilitate the Q&A sessions, this number will be common. So just bear that in mind. That's your question number. It could have easily been question 1, question 2, question 3, and so on, but it's a codified number. The letter in brackets, B, is the correct answer for the question. So you have a question here, A, B, C, D. That letter B just shows what the correct answer is inside of here. And this other cryptic number is taken from the FCC regulations for amateur radio, what is called Part 97. So they're just saying that Part 97.305 is where you will find in the regulations, the relative regulations in relation to this question, all right? And the rest of it will be straightforward. You have the question, and then you have the choices. 1 will be correct. Well, I'm saying 1 because sometimes you have all of the above, but you have to choose one of the answers, A, B, C, or D, and only one letter can be selected, as the others are distractors or they'll be incorrect. So this is how a question in the question pool will look like when we get to it. All right, so we're not doing too badly on time. We might finish a little bit early. So let's talk about the exam themselves. So the multiple choice questions we just saw, A, B, C, or D, it's a question pool based exam. So all of the questions are known. There are no unseen or unknown questions. Every question that you will get in the exam, the actual exam, you will have sight of that in the question pool. They cannot introduce a new question that you did not see. That's a good thing. The question pool itself expires every couple of years. So right now, the question pool for the general class is valid from the year 2019 to the year 2023. What that means is that you have up until the year 2023 for what you have studied to be valid in the exam. After that, the question pool changes by a certain percentage, and you would probably have to study some of the new questions. So that's the consequence of the question pool validity period. And the exam themselves are progressive. Think of it like you do O levels and then A levels and so on, or you do primary school, then O levels and A levels, right? You could think of it that way. So you have the technician level, you have the general level, and you have the amateur extra. All those are the 3 classes, and those are the 3 exams that you can take in the FCC system. But before you can take the general exam, you must have taken and passed the technician. Before you take the amateur extra exam, you must have taken the general, and before that, the technician. The cool thing about it is when you go to sit an exam, you can do multiple exams in one sitting. So you can, if you want, you could study for the technician and the general and the extra and go and sit all 3 in one sitting for the same price. All right. However, many persons just at the first turn take the technician exam. And then a couple of months later, they will tackle the general and so on. And maybe a couple of months later, the extra. But quite a few people actually take the technician and general at the same time. Yeah. So when you take the exams, what you get from after you've passed it is a certificate of successful completion of examination, or a CSCE. That is what you get once you have completed the exam. Now, when you do the FCC exam, you will also be registered by the volunteer examiners one time to get a United States call sign. So for persons in Trinidad and Tobago, you will be issued a US call sign, but you will then need to take that certificate that you got to the local authority, the Telecoms Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, that's TAT, to get your local call sign. You have to apply for it. But what you take, your qualification to get that local call sign or that local license is in fact that CSCE. So we ask persons, please don't lose your CSCE. Even though it's only valid for a particular period, it will tell you the validity period, but it is your evidence of having passed an exam. So please don't lose that CSCE once you get it. But exams are conducted by volunteer examiners. As mentioned before, this course does not include the exams. The VEs are separate and apart from what we're doing here. Those are the persons that conduct the exam, and arrangements will need to be made with the VEs to take or sit your exam. And we will be provided information about taking the exams, right? So prior to COVID-19, in Trinidad and Tobago, we would have had exam sessions every 3 to 4 months or so in Trinidad and in Tobago. With COVID-19, we have not had exams here for the last year or so. However, exams are coming up. Actually, tomorrow is going to be the first exam in a very long time. So what happens if we can't take local exams? Well, remote exams, some people call it online exams, but it's really remote exams, have been authorized by the FCC. And there are many United States-based volunteer examiners that conduct remote exams. So if you don't or can't make it for a local in-person exam, you can, in fact, take the exam remotely or online. And again, further information will be provided along the way. So we did say that to attend this course, there's no cost, right? However, when it comes time for you to take the exam, there is a cost. And when it comes times for you to become licensed, there is a fee. So the cost approximately to take the exam is about $15 US. And that's payable to the volunteer examiners at that time. Very soon, there's a new FCC filing fee. Previously, there was no filing fee, so it was $0. But now there's going to be a $35 US filing fee. So I think how it's going to work is that when you take the exam with the VEs, I suspect you'll have to forward that remittance to them one time. I believe that is how it's going to work in terms of the filing fee. All right, so just bear that in mind. There is a cost to do the exam and to become licensed. So we did say that we are doing the general class course and therefore the general class exam, which is also known as Element 3. There are 35 questions that you're going to get in the actual exam that's taken from the question pool of 500 or so possible questions. All right. You will be getting the question pool as part of the next email that all participants will receive. To pass the exam, you need to get 26 questions correct. That's 75%. So once you do so, you will pass and you'll get your certificate. This is a very doable exam because there are no unseen questions. Every question that you get, you would have seen in the question pool. You need to work with a pencil and a calculator when you go to do the exam. And just a recommendation, please study. Don't take it for granted. We have several persons in the class that work in an industry or have studied courses, electronics and physics and chemistry and so on, radio communications, telecommunications, and so on. And that's great. That's certainly an advantage with the material. However, we urge study the question pool, study the exam before taking it. As a matter of fact, we will see us recommend at the last bullet point here is do online practice exams, so that will give you an idea how ready you are for taking the exam. So the next in-person exam in Trinidad and Tobago is actually taking place tomorrow. That's Saturday, the 10th of April, 10 o'clock in the morning at the Telecoms Authority. All right. It's not yet clear when the next exam will be, but given that they have restarted exams, I suspect they'll be looking to hold regularly scheduled exams. I don't know if it's going to be every 3 months or 4 months or more regularly than that, or depending on the number of candidates, that will be left to be seen. However, even if there are not any local exams in TNT, remote exams are going to continue to be available for the foreseeable future. So on the top right-hand corner, sorry, on the right-hand side of the screen, you should be seeing hamstudy.org website. That's, for example, a listing of upcoming exam sessions. So more on that later on. So how does one obtain an amateur radio license? Well, you have to study the syllabus, all of the curriculum that we mentioned earlier. It is recommended that you take practice exams. You have many online resources, and very shortly we'll have a slide with a list of sites that you can do and go and take those practice exams. All right. So I am seeing a lot of questions, and I will try to tackle those questions in the Q&A session if that will be okay with participants, so that we could get through the material. So thanks a lot for the questions. Really do appreciate it very much. All right. So once you take your practice exams, if you take four practice exams in a row and you pass all of them handsomely, you're getting 85, 95%, you know you're ready for the exam. If you take one exam, you kind of almost make one, you get through with one, you almost make one. That might suggest that you need a little further study or review of the material. But I will say, if you have a scheduled exam coming up, like an in-person or a local exam, and you want to take it, take the exam. You might very well be pleasantly surprised, right? So then you schedule the exam. You can either take one of the local in-person exams, whatever jurisdiction that you are, or depending on availability, or you can do the online exam. There is an FCC course, what's called the course site, where your license will show up. And that link there is the link to the FCC course site. When you sit the exam, because it's a US-based FCC exam, you need to produce or provide a valid United States address. Not an issue for persons who reside in the US. So people often ask the question, but I live in Trinidad and Tobago, I live in Dominica, I live wherever we reside. How do we do that? Well, you can ask a friend, a family member, or if you have something like a Skybox, if you have one of those freight forwarder type addresses that you can receive mail on, that works as well. It just needs to be a valid United States address, and it works. So you then, after sit the exam, you get your CSCE, and then that is valid for 10 years. That license that you get from the SEC, the FCC will issue that license usually within a couple of days, because the volunteer examiners will do the filings for you, and it will show up in the license database. And that license will be available or valid for 10 years. Then you have to renew. Note that there are new fees now to renew. Up until before April, there was no cost to renew your license. Now, due to the Ray Bombs Act, it's now $35 US every time you need to renew or file anything. If you need to apply for vanity or change your call sign, you have to pay that filing fee. All right. In Trinidad and Tobago, for the TNT participants, your license is obtained through TAT, that's the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. And currently, licenses are issued for a 3-year term. You pay $20 TT in application fees, and then every year you pay $100 to maintain your license. You can pay that upfront in advance for the 3 years. To get that license, normally from application will take maybe about 3 months. So just bear that in mind. So you do have to apply in TNT to get your local license and your local call sign. And other countries, well, it will vary. All right. So you need to check with your local jurisdiction and authorities. So we come to this slide with the practice exams. So there are many places that you can go online and take a practice test. The first one, which is hamstudy.org, if you use that link that I provided there, and this is optional, but if you use that link and you register using that link, I will have visibility of your progress. It's entirely optional. It's up to you if you want me to have visibility of your progress as you take your practice exam. I would appreciate it very much, but that's okay. It's not required. But feel free, anyone who would like to do so. The others are also practice test sites, and you can generate an exam and take it, and it will tell you what your score and which ones you got wrong, if any at all, and so on. So that's how the practice exam works. So if you take 4 or 5 of those exams in a row and you have passed them, you know you're ready for the real exam. So that is the best gauge as to readiness for the exam. So we do have a couple of frequently asked questions from the registration form and some calls that we'd have gotten that I don't think we dealt with in the other section. So we pull them out here. So the first one is Morse code or CW required to obtain an amateur radio license? Well, for the purpose of the FCC and TAT licenses, the answer is no. Most of the countries around the world since the 1990s no longer require Morse code proficiency to get a ham license or an amateur radio license. However, it is still a valid mode that amateurs use, and you are encouraged to consider learning it. So it's something that you can still pursue as a ham, even though you don't need it to obtain your license. Some countries require for you to become an accredited examiner that you must have Morse code proficiency. I believe there are still a couple of countries that require it for examiners. But for our purposes here, most of us who are participating, no, you don't need to learn Morse code. But again, it's something that is encouraged for you to consider developing as a skill. Next question. All right, so let's see. Okay, Franz, thanks a lot. I really appreciate the information that in St. Lucia or Juliet 6, it's EC $25 to apply for the license and EC $50 for a 5-year license. For general and novice, it's the same as EC 50, but it's for 3 years instead of 5. So thank you so much, dear friends. And we do have persons who have expert knowledge in the group, and we really do appreciate the contribution. So Franz, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, and also Jermaine, thanks for the information as well. See that you applied for your local tech license yesterday. Congratulations, very, very good. All right. So again, folks, sorry, I'm not taking all of the questions. I really do apologize. It's just there's so many, the questions are just scrolling off the screen. So for us to get through the material, I would rather answer those questions subsequently. So folks, please bear with us. I really would have liked to have answered the questions live and direct, but it's just overwhelming, right? We have, I think, over 100 persons in the class right now, and everyone is asking a lot of great questions. So thank you so much. Just apologies for not being able to tackle all of them. But keep them coming or send them via email. It will really be appreciated and we will respond. The next frequently asked question that we got. Do I need to have any radio equipment to study for my amateur radio license? Well, the short answer is no, you don't. you can obtain equipment after you get your license. As a matter of fact, in some jurisdictions, it will not be proper to possess amateur radio equipment without a license. In some territories, they talk about install and operate, and it's kind of silent on possess. All right, so some places you can possess, you can buy amateur radio equipment and have it just as long as you don't use it, all right? You don't transmit and so on. But to earn the side of caution, to answer the question, no, you don't need it to pursue your amateur radio license per se, right? I mean, I guess there could be some advantages when you're touching and feeling equipment, but there are many alternatives that you can, you have online radios that you can tune, listen to, and monitor, and we'll be sharing those information later on in the course, right? But the simple answer is no, not for this course that we're pursuing here. It's not required. If you're already a ham and you have license for technician and you're in possession of equipment, it will help because you can touch and feel equipment. And, as we go through some of the features, modes, touching the equipment might help as well. All right. Okay. Do I have to take the exams after doing the course? Well, no, it's entirely up to you after you take this course, whether you wish to pursue the exam or not. However, we really are hoping that you would consider taking the exam and becoming a licensed amateur, all right? But no, you don't have to. There's nothing we have to, right? Well, there are some things, but not this. All right, so hope that clears it up. No pressure on anyone whatsoever. It's entirely up to you. Like I said in the opening, there are persons that's taking this course just to become familiar with some of the information. If we inspire you to take the exam, all the better, but no pressure. Another question. I really don't do well in exams, but how can I overcome that concern? Yeah, okay, we know that. Many of us are not really, it's just like, some of us don't like to go to the doctor and get a needle stuck in us to take blood, for example, right? Many of us don't like that. But, sometimes you have to do it if you want to do it. So, no, you don't have to be fearful of the exam. Here are a couple of reasons why. The practice tests you can do in your own privacy, and you can see if you're passing them before you tackle the real exam. So if you're taking 4 and 5 of those exams and you're passing all of them, guess what? You're ready. You could just go online and do the remote exam, or you go in person. And as we say in TNT, you will lick them up, right? So consider, even though, you may be a bit on the exam shy side, as many of us are, the solace is that you have the practice tests that you can take, and hopefully that will build your confidence in taking the real exam. All right. Yes, Desi, no problem. So hopefully the recording would have stuck, and you'll be able to replay any of the items, any parts that you missed. That's okay. All right. Again, we're in the orientation session, and all of the slides will be shared with you. All right. So another question, I'm a young person, I'm under 18, can I take the exam? Sure you can. All right, in fact, we encourage young persons to become licensed amateurs, right? As a matter of fact, I know we have a couple, I think Ishmael, you're in the class, and I think we have several other young persons. Really, really a pleasure to have you in here, right? Young persons. In TNT, very soon, persons under 18 will be able to get a license. We expect that recommendation to be implemented very soon as well. So yes, please consider it. Consider encouraging young persons to take the course and become licensed hams. Yes, by all means, you can take the exam. I think this is the last question. What can I do with an amateur radio license? Quite frankly, I didn't know how to answer this, not because there's not an answer. It's just that there's so many things that could be said to answer this question. So my stab at answering it is there's an almost limitless number of things that you could do with a ham radio license, right? As mentioned before, an amateur radio license is a license to experiment with radio frequency spectrum. You get a license, you are trained, and you can experiment doing so many things. You get the opportunity to experiment with electronics and technologies. Your operational procedures and practice helps you develop your communication skills as well, generally. And as we mentioned in the volunteerism part of our discussion, HAMs have the opportunity to contribute to disaster preparedness and response within communities and nations. So for instance, right now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they're facing this real disaster situation with the La Soufrière volcano, and radio operators, ham radio operators are on the spot providing information. You know, even on Zello as well, we have radio operators that are providing updates as it goes. So human service, communicating and saving lives. So not a complete answer, but it's limitless. And as you go through the course, you will see for yourselves some of the possibilities. As you go through the technician class material, hopefully we have whet people's appetite as to what is possible. You can take a handheld radio the size of a cell phone and communicate with the International Space Station or a satellite that is passing overhead and communicate with another ham or amateur radio operator in Brazil, for instance. So we have several ham radio operators who are online right now in the course to do just that. Right? They talk using a radio that you can buy online on Amazon for 25 US and actually talk to a satellite through a satellite station to another amateur radio operator. Isn't that amazing? All right, so in terms of the material, so the text, handouts and supplementary material. So right after today's session, you will be receiving, each person who have registered, an email with the link and the slide deck, as well as attachments. We will be providing part 97. We'll be providing the general class question pool. We will be providing a syllabus document. That's another good study guide. Again, sometimes, you know, some of us, when we study, we like to see material presented in different ways. So apart from this course, you may want to have a look at how someone else presented the information, and it might gel as a result. So we are providing some additional material that's within our remit to be able to do. It's freely available. However, you can take this course by just watching these videos or looking at these sessions and studying on the basis of it. However, highly recommended, we like to highly recommend that you acquire some other text. And we have 3 items that's listed there, and we will be providing the Amazon links to you. If you wish, you can purchase them via Amazon or any other online retailer. What we caution is make sure that you're buying the latest edition for the current question pool. I know of persons who saw a deal online and they end up buying a question pool for a prior period. Now, nothing is technically wrong with that. I mean, just a percentage of the questions that would have changed. But if you're buying a book, you might want to get the latest. So we recommend the No Nonsense Guide. We also recommend the ARRL license manual, and of course, the Gordon West version. So those links will be sent to you to the actual book. So there are just some pictures online for you to see what those books are. I will be using the No Nonsense Guide as part of my presentation. Unfortunately, unlike the technician class where we were able to freely distribute that document to persons, we are not able to do so for the general class. If you're interested in getting a copy of the book, a PDF of it, you have to purchase it online. But I'll be using it as part of the presentation as we go through after the slide deck. One of the reasons I love the No Nonsense Guide is because they do not have the distractors. So Amali, a person can still register using that same link, general.ttreact.com. They can register. However, the recommendation is suggest to the person to go through the technician class material using tech.ttreact.com, 16 sessions, so that they wouldn't be too lost, hopefully, when we come to dealing with the general class material. So it's not technically too late to do so, all right? Good question. So what are the next steps? So first and foremost, quite a number of the persons who are online in the course have not accessed the technician class material as yet, and that's fine. So you have another week again to consider going through the technician class. Notice in today's session, we have not gone through any of the teaching material, for quite deliberately, right? Because we are aware there are many persons who have not yet seen or viewed the technician class material. So to access those recorded sessions, the link is on your screen. Here it is. It's tech.ttreact.com. Just put that into a browser and you can view the 16 sessions by playback via YouTube. Now, I got a question from a couple of persons where, 16 sessions, that's a lot of time. I'm so busy. When will I ever get the time to look at those videos? So I tend to ask each of those persons who told me that. I said, do you use Netflix? Well, of course, everybody fan of Netflix, always looking at, comedies or whatever the latest is and so on, and looking at a movie. And then I asked the question, well, how often do you look at Netflix? And people say, well, after work, almost every night, Saturdays and Sundays, 2-3 hours, I binge watch. So I said, well, if you're interested, what you can do is almost every smart TV that has Netflix would also have the YouTube app. So you can go on that same smart TV in the comfort of your living room, bedroom, wherever it is you have that big screen TV, and fire up the YouTube app and just simply go and search in the YouTube app for this call sign, 9Z4RG. When you search there, you will get the individual sessions, or you will see the playlist of the 16 sessions for the amateur radio technician class. So it's available to you. It's really based on your interests, and we highly encourage you to, if you're not already familiar with the technician class material, please take the time and go through it. You have another week before we begin going through some of the technical material to brush up on that. So you have a weekend here, we have a week ahead. We know everybody's busy, right? Life throws a lot at us. But if you're interested and you want to do it, there are many opportunities. So provide some feedback. Let me know how it goes, folks. And also all of the handouts that were distributed for the technician class, every single one, all of the slide decks, everything, all of the handouts are available at techdocs.ttreact.com. It takes you to a Digo, it's like a Dropbox, and you simply right click and save the files if you wish to access all of those handouts and material. Also note, we will be sending out at least one email weekly to participants. So we ask participants, please stay close to your email and please do read carefully what is sent out via email. We'll be sending links and so on to persons. The class is very large, so please do check your email regularly. That will be the primary means of communicating to you on the next session, the links to use, any attachments and so on. So I'm hoping that everyone is okay and up to speed with their email on a regular basis. Submit any questions via email. My address again, robbie@9z4rg.com. It's up on your screen there for anyone. There it is. And I hope everyone stays the course. Yes, it's a bit of a long haul, 16 weeks at least, but really hope that everyone is able to stay the course to the end. And of course, persons who miss sessions, we hopefully will have the recorded sessions available via YouTube again. I'm hoping that tonight's session gets successfully recorded. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, eyes crossed, everything crossed. So, folks, be safe out there. Let me just see if there are any final questions I can answer before. Right, okay. Yep, very good. Thanks a lot for all of the feedback and Q&A questions. Lovely. All right, so be safe out there, folks. We do have an adverse weather alert, number 1, yellow level for Trinidad and Tobago for tomorrow. That's Saturday, the 10th of April, 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we may be in for some bad weather tomorrow, according to the Met Services. Our colleagues, our friends, our neighbors in SVG there with the La Soufrière volcano eruption, they are going through a tough time. So let's keep them in our prayers. And of course, feel free to monitor via Zello. We will be sharing links to how you can monitor amateur radio traffic as well, even if you don't have amateur radio equipment. Well, okay, so McThomas, good question. I recommend all 3, but I'm using the No Nonsense guide for the course. So if you wish to be in sync with what we'll be presenting, you can select the No Nonsense guide. That's the orange book. But I will send links, Amazon links. Some of this, you don't have to wait to skybox it, you can download the PDF if you wish and watch it on a tablet or a computer. And you can even print it if you so wish and you don't want to wait for a physical hard copy in your skybox. So you could buy it and get it delivered immediately online. So it really is what, sure, no problem, you're certainly welcome. And it's really what you're comfortable. All of us learn differently. Some of us are visual learners, some of us are auditory, some of us are kinesthetic. So each one of us learn differently, some of us are hybrid. So it's what works for us, what works for you. That's fine. Okay, so our next session will be Friday, the 16th of April, 2021, 8:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, Eastern Standard Time, synchronized. That's UTC -4, God's willing. The time is now 9:37, so we just went 7 minutes over. But I would like to thank each and every one of you for registering to participate, even persons who are doing a refresher, people who are new to amateur radio. Hopefully you're inspired to stay the course. And we will have some fun along the way. Please go through the technician class material. That's probably the most important takeaway that I will ask of each everyone so that we are up to speed when we start the technical material. We wouldn't have to go over too much. We will try as far as possible and take it as slow and as gently as we can. All right. So thank you, everyone. All the best. Do have a good night. Take good care. Keep in touch. Thanks so much. Thanks, Franz. Really appreciate it. Bobby, thank you so much. Ramzan, yes, lovely indeed. But Thomas, much appreciated. Yes. Really, really glad to have everyone in the class today. And we do look forward to spending the next couple of months with each and every one. Thanks, Bobby. George, appreciate it, man. Take good care. Adesh, lovely. Pamela, thanks a lot. Jermaine, wonderful. Brianna, yes. Brianna, I think I spoke with your brother earlier today, so welcome onto the class. Timothy, wonderful. Well, June, great to have you back. Lovely, glad you were able to make it. Great to have you as well. Folks, thanks, take good care, all the best. Okay, Eric, take good care, man. Be safe, all the best.